Good afternoon, or almost afternoon. I'm Amy Briesner, a member of the League of Women Voters, and I'd like to welcome you to the State of the County Luncheon. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy days to be here. And also, thank you so much to the League of Women volunteers who helped put this event together. Please give them a round of applause. I'd also like to thank Kirkwood for hosting us, and thanks to our sponsors. The gold sponsors, Alliant Energy, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City Building Trades Council, the Greater Cedar Rapids Community Foundation, MidAmerican Energy, and Shuttleworth and Ingersoll PLC. Our silver sponsors are Collins Aerospace and Simmons Perrine Moyer Bergman PLC. A quick reminder of what the League of Women Voters of Linn County is all about. Our mission is to promote direct discourse and discussion of League of Women Voters related issues with members, government representatives, and our community. We're an advocacy and education entity, and we work towards the common good to share unbiased, fact-based information with the members and the community. We also build social connections, and we nurture a passion for action. We are celebrating National County Government Month, and so there will be an opportunity to talk more about that during the presentation or after. Now I would like to begin our program formally, and we will be hearing from our Linn County Supervisor District 2, Ben Rogers. And as I said earlier, after he concludes his remarks, we will have an opportunity for questions. You have notepads on your table and pencils, so please raise your hand and a League volunteer will come around and collect those. I will pose those questions at the end of Mr. Rogers' speech. And don't leave me hanging. I don't want to have to come up with my own questions, and probably Mr. Rogers doesn't either. So please ask those questions, and we'll look forward to hearing from you then. If there's a plethora of questions, I'll do my best to ask as many as possible. And with that, please help me welcome Ben Rogers.
There we go. Welcome to the State of the County and or a wedding based on the decorations. We have very specific demands whenever there's a State of the County that we have to have a chandelier. So, friends and distinguished guests, it is my high privilege and distinct honor to present the annual State of the County address. I am ecstatic that we are gathered here safely in person for the first time in almost 2 years. This is a time to celebrate and reflect on what we have been through and realize that we are a more resilient community as a result. Like Amy Briesner, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting and organizing this event. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in democracy. I would also like to take a point of personal privilege and welcome my family for being here today, especially my wife, Andrea, and my children, Kieran and Penelope. Our children, and I mean that collectively, showed me with their childlike wonderment what true grace looks like during this pandemic, how to adapt to challenging situations like virtual schooling. And even though our everyday lives have been upended, this is just another opportunity to reinvent what we consider normal. They face an unknown virus invisible to them with grit, fortitude, and most importantly, love. As adults, we still have a lot we can learn from children if we stop for just a moment to realize that we need each other in order to move forward. I am so grateful for Penelope and Kieran being here, and I love them both very much. Yes, clap for my children. As a parent, it is difficult to explain to your children that we might not know what to do, or we don't know where this road leads because we're walking it together for the first time. Children often look for their parents for answers, and nothing can really prepare you for a global pandemic that impacts every aspect of our lives, or a Category 4 inland hurricane occurring at the same time. However, watching my children play together in the dark of night because our power had not been restored, or the ease in which they navigated the world wearing a mask, and perhaps more importantly, reminding me and us that our humanity towards each other matters, especially for those with whom we disagree. They showed tremendous courage in the face of the unknown. Our community is not a stranger to events unimaginable. We never anticipated over 31 feet of water in downtown Cedar Rapids, but we soon learned that our fate is in our own hands, and that is why we have trained repeatedly over the years on flood preparedness, and I feel as though we have that down to an art and science. However, I'm confident that nobody in this room ever imagined a day where they would experience 140-mile-an-hour sustained winds for 60 minutes in Iowa. Together with the city of Cedar Rapids, surrounding metro cities, the Linn County Emergency Management Agency, Linn County Public Health, nonprofit service providers, and private businesses, we are building a more robust and resilient systems around our blind spots to ensure that we are better prepared for the known and the unknown, the imagined and the unimaginable. It was former boxing heavyweight champion of the world Mike Tyson who once said, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." We may not have a plan for everything, but our community has shown over and over again that we can take a punch and are still left standing afterwards. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the elected officials from a variety of local governments for joining us here today, including our newest Linn County Attorney, Nick Maybanks, and our new supervisor, Louis Zumbaugh. You might be familiar with Louis in his former capacity as a state legislator, but he is also a fifth-generation Iowa farmer. When Louis sees a problem, he is naturally wired to want to solve it. Maybe the lens through which we look at life might be different, but Louis adds valuable insights, strategies, and wisdom to the board. Last year, after several days of strategic planning with members of the community on revising Linn County's 5-year strategic plan, Louis and his wife Deb invited our 2 consultants, our HR director, Stacy Walker, and myself, to his farm for a dinner to break bread and enjoy each other's company. Naturally, Stacy showed up to Louis' farm in a suit and a tie. Some of you in this room may have experienced Stacy Walker's gratitude exercise while groups gather or while enjoying a meal together. It's very simple. Each person speaks upon the things, persons, or events that give them gratitude. They get to speak uninterrupted, and the only rule is that everyone must give the speaker their undivided attention. When you speak your truths, you find out quickly that the things that unite us are far more numerous than the things that divide us. Tears were shed. And interestingly enough, we got into a lengthy discussion about the mating habits of lobsters. Because one of our consultants is from Maine, and apparently it's a thing. So I'm not trying to embarrass my brother, Stacy, but it is a fact that his familiarity with farms is limited. At one point in the conversation, Louis and his wife, Deb, would ask questions about Stacy's familiarity with basic pieces of farming equipment. They were amazed when he was unaware what an auger was. Stacy calmly just wiped the corners of his mouth with his napkin, looked at them both and said, "Do you know what a do-rag is?" Louis' response was, "Touché." Yeah. We shared a lot of laughs, but if you could have been a fly in the wall, you would have seen what we expect political leaders to do: find enjoyment from our similarities and celebrate our differences with curiosity and a desire for deeper understanding. That experience gave me hope that despite real and perceived political differences, we have an extraordinary capacity to find the good in all of us. For the past 2 years, it has felt like we've been learning how to fly a plane and repairing it at the same time and living in a world of stark paradoxes. For instance, at the start of the pandemic, people cheered healthcare workers and doctors at the beginning and end of their shifts. However, healthcare workers and doctors went from being celebrated to, in many instances, vilified, their expertise questioned, and science rejected. Many of us in this room received hundreds of emails from constituents who would rather believe the medical advice of their chiropractor or a stranger on Facebook over a licensed medical doctor or a public health professional, including Lynn County's Dr. Pramod Dwivedi. Even our concept of time has been challenged. How often throughout this pandemic have you felt time speed up and slow down at the same time? Or asked yourself, what day is it today? Voter turnout for school board elections historically is very low. School board members are not paid, and they oversee the largest percentage of tax dollars within a taxing district. However, throughout this pandemic, school board meetings have become the most attended, disrupted, and contentious public meetings across Iowa and the United States. In this community, Cedar Rapids school board members have been subject to process servers coming to their homes to serve them with documents demanding that they pay aggrieved parents who are anti-mask and anti-vaccinations to pay the equivalent of the total amount of the national debt in gold coins, silver dollars, or the cryptocurrency equivalent. We even had a gentleman come to Lynn County to record liens on school-owned property and school board members' homes. These liens are not legally enforceable, but this is the age we live in. And that isn't even the most bizarre. In the past 2 years, Auditor Joe Miller and I have become pretty decent friends and colleagues, and he and the board have had a really great working relationship. And that is something I truly value. And I appreciate all of our elected officials in trying to run one of the most robust, excellent counties in the state of Iowa. Some of the themes that I hope emerge from this speech are the resiliency of our community, strengthened by working collaboratively with public and private institutions, and the idea of post-traumatic growth, which is defined as a positive psychological change experienced as a result of the struggle with a highly challenging life circumstances. Put more simply, post-traumatic growth is the ability for people, organizations, and systems to be tested by external forces only to rebound better, stronger, and in a position to thrive. Not everyone in our community has experienced growth after trauma. Much like grief, how each of us responded and reacted to this pandemic is individual, ebbing and flowing over and through us at different speeds and with different outcomes. I often describe Lynn County as the safety net for the safety net, and we are the layer of government designed to provide critical human services to individuals and families who struggle, and oftentimes we are the organization of last resort. We have all shouldered tremendous burdens throughout this pandemic, made sacrifices, socially distanced, became stay-at-home teachers, and I would argue that few have had to shoulder more than Dr. Pramod Dwivedi, Lynn County Public Health Director, and his team. Recommendations made by Dr. Dwivedi would influence decisions by policymakers, impact how businesses can operate, if schools could remain open, or how long we would need to quarantine. Few have had to fly a plane, turn on the fasten seatbelt sign, extinguish a cabin fire, serve the drinks, land safely, and be ready for the next flight all at the same time. Dr. Pramod Dwivedi, his team of incredible public health epidemiologists, nurses, and staff coordinated continuously with both local hospitals, emergency management, and state, local, and federal government agencies. I want to thank Dr. Dwivedi and his staff of incredible public health workers for the burden they shouldered, the time away from their families, from their everyday lives, to just try and keep this community safe. Your Lynn County Public Health Department was the first nationally accredited public health agency in the state of Iowa by the Public Health Accreditation Board. This national accreditation program, which receives support from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, sets standards against which the nation's governmental public health departments can continuously improve the quality of their service and performance. In addition, Lynn County Public Health was one of only 8 departments nationally to receive the Preventing Violence Affecting Young Lives grant, also known as PREVAIL. This $1.25 million grant will allow Lynn County Public Health to continue to work closely with community partners to align with and complement current violent prevention and community care coordination initiatives within Cedar Rapids and Lynn County to address risk factors of youth violence. The Board of Supervisors also welcomes Lynn County Public Health's new Health Equity Manager, Ann Harris Carter. Ann is a friend to many of us here in this room and throughout the community. She is one of the 12 children of Dr. Percy and Aaliyah Harris, for whom we named our new public health and child and youth development after. The ongoing pandemic, the ripple effects of the derecho, changing conditions of the economy, and a prolonged disconnect from family and friends, and a loss of normalcy has impacted almost every person in our community differently. Even the most resilient among us have struggled. A population that has been severely impacted by all the above are those at risk of becoming homeless and the chronically homeless. When I was growing up in Cedar Rapids, I don't recall seeing people living on the streets or under bridges. As a community, it felt like we were insulated from the on-the-street homelessness that you might see in a larger city. But we were not insulated from the myriad of issues, barriers, and systems that prevent individuals and family from being more at risk of being homeless. Our community has seen record number of on-the-street homeless, often presenting some of the most severe and profound brain health and substance use challenges. Homelessness is defined by the Department of Housing and Urban Development as a person sleeping in an emergency shelter, transitional housing, or a place not meant for human habitation. A statistic that startles me every time I hear it is that children consistently make up 40% of the homeless population in our community. This didn't make sense to me until I learned that the leading cause of homelessness in Cedar Rapids, or one of the leading causes, is not directly related to drugs, alcohol, or a lack of money, or lack of a job. It's domestic violence. Cedar Rapids City Council member Scott Olson and I have for years talked about how to improve service delivery and funding for homeless services. We co-authored a guest editorial where we introduced readers to a person named Brian. Brian and his family have been homeless for almost 2 years, bouncing around friends' couches and shelters. Brian and his family cannot afford a security deposit nor the first or last month's rent to secure an apartment. We wanted readers to assume Brian was an adult, and with the details we provided readers, it was very easy to assume Brian was homeless due to, in large part, to the consequences of his life choices. Compassion and understanding for people struggling to get out of cycles of poverty are sadly not in abundance. In this story, Brian was a 6-year-old. We wanted readers to rethink their biases. Since 2019, Scott Olson, along with all of his city council members, the city manager and city staff, have been tremendous partners in assisting Lynn County and Willis Dady with opening and operating a cold weather overflow shelter at Lynn County's Fillmore building. Lynn County's overflow shelter was originally designed to serve as an overflow during the cold months, but as a result of COVID and derecho, it remained in operation continually for almost 2 years. The cold weather overflow shelter closed its doors just recently on March 31st. During the season, we served 623 unduplicated individuals with an average of 62 individuals per night. To put that in perspective, we served almost a similar amount, 643 individuals, with an average of 55 per night the year before. When the cold weather overflow shelter first opens its doors in 2015, we served 92 unduplicated individuals with an average of 7 individuals per night. With Scott Olson's guidance as a commercial realtor, Lynn County used monies from the American Rescues Plan Act to purchase a permanent overflow shelter on the west side of Cedar Rapids. This shelter will be remodeled to better serve individuals and families who are homeless or needing temporary shelter. This is yet another example of local government working best when it works together. In addition, Lynn County was awarded $5.3 million in federal emergency rental assistance dollars to keep individuals and families housed who are at risk of being evicted once the federal eviction moratorium was lifted in 2021. This program helped more than 1,500 people stay in their homes or apartments. And I want that number 1,500 to hang out there for just a second. If this program did not exist, our homeless numbers would have increased significantly, and again, 40% of the homeless in our population are children. As I have often stated, and it is worth repeating, Lynn County is the safety net for the safety net. One of the strands of that net that I am most proud of is Lynn County's Mental Health Access Center, which celebrated its one-year anniversary of opening in March 2021. The Access Center started off as a whisper, an idea with no money, no location, no services, and questions on sustainability given Iowa's low Medicaid rates for reimbursement for services. Community partners like Foundation 2, Penn Center, Abbey Center for Community Mental Health, Area Substance Abuse Council, Area Ambulance, local law enforcement, and both hospitals committed to figuring out how we could make this idea a reality. Access centers help answer a question that has long plagued law enforcement, ambulance services, and emergency room doctors when interacting with someone who is having a mental health crisis or is challenged by their substance use disorder. And that question is this: where can I safely divert or discharge this person to? Oftentimes, the only answer to that question is the emergency room or jail. We can do better than housing people in emergency rooms and jails while they wait for services. Lynn County's Mental Health Access Center provides an array of evidence-based services like crisis observation, which is for 23 hours, crisis stabilization, which someone can stay there for up to 5 days, a sobering unit, and a medically supervised detox unit. I still have the text message from Erin Foster, the Access Center director, when we received our first patient. Years of planning, remodeling, and thinking about an access center, and the day had finally arrived when it was being used. Her text was an interaction she had with the patient. As Erin was leaving for the night and was checking in on the patient said, and I'm editing this because my children are in the room, but she said to Erin, "Thank you for giving a blank about me. Nobody really does." And that you can't help but be left in tears. And this is what the building and services was designed for. And so now we're just going to play, hopefully, a quick video of the Access Center.
So the Access Center is a project that works to meet people where they're at. So it really functions as kind of a mental health urgent care in an effort to divert people from hospitals and law enforcement and contact in jail.
This gives law enforcement a 24/7 option when we run into people in crisis or having a mental health crisis to get them the help that they need. This is someplace that's open all the time and not have to take them to a hospital where they may not need that acute treatment, but they still need some treatment and they need some help. All of our officers, all of our deputies are crisis intervention trained, which helps us identify somebody that is going through a mental health crisis and not necessarily something that is criminal in nature.
It'll be staffed by individuals who can do an assessment, they can triage you, and we can get you connected right within the center to a number of providers that can support you.
This community conversation began about 10 years ago when a group of service providers got together and realized that there was a level of care that was missing.
Once the Access Center opens, they'll be able to walk in, they'll get the help that they need, and they'll get connected to the care that they want at that time.
To date, we have helped over 535 walk-ins and 96 referrals from law enforcement who may have otherwise gone to jail or the hospital. The top 3 presenting issues from law enforcement referrals were intoxication, mental health emergencies, and suicidal thoughts. Mental Health Access Center staff and our partners do not define what a crisis is. When you have the courage to finally seek help, or if this is your 10th time needing the Access Center, you are treated with compassion, empathy, and no judgment. We are all complicated people navigating in a complex world. When each patient is discharged, they're given the opportunity to complete a brief survey to help us improve and address any issues. One statistic that stands out is that 70% of patients who completed this survey with this question, what type of services would you have accessed if the Access Center was not available, stated they would have either sought no services whatsoever or would have gone to the hospital. This service is working precisely as it is designed, and I thank all of our partners, which includes the current and previous members of the Board of Supervisors, the mental health region, our partners who are in the Access Center, and as well as the community's support. In addition to our commitment to improving brain health services in the community, Lynn County is also a Make It Okay workplace ambassador to reduce the stigma of brain health and substance use challenges. The stigma of having brain health challenges or an addiction is real, and Lynn County wants our employees and the communities to know, for those who struggle with these issues, that you are seen, you are valued, we are listening, and you are not alone. Now, I don't know how one successfully transitions from talking about mental health to utility scale solar, but if you ever want to have your sobriety challenged, try sitting through 15 hours of public input sessions. Lynn County is at the leading edge of renewable energy in Iowa. This year, the Board of Supervisors approved on a 2-to-1 vote a 750-acre, 100-megawatt utility-scale solar project in Coggan, Iowa, which will employ local labor from our labor shed in the construction and decommissioning of the panels and will power more than 18,000 homes in Iowa. It is estimated this project will cost over $150 million. Lynn County currently has several applications for review of from NextEra Energy. Phase 1 is scheduled to be a 50-megawatt array on 316 acres. Phase 2 is scheduled to be a 150-megawatt array with a 75-megawatt battery storage in Palo, Iowa, in the shadows of the recently decommissioned Duane Arnold Nuclear Energy Center. This is a voluntary program of farmers choosing to lease their land up to 40 years to private entities. Farmers are trading growing one fuel source for another, and this is farming in the 21st century. Lynn County is also charting a more resilient and sustainable future by formally creating a new Department of Sustainability with Tamara Marcus, a PhD candidate in environmental science. Tam is really, in our organization, is only the second person of color to ever run a Lynn County department. Under her tenure, Lynn County created the first greenhouse gas inventory to establish a baseline. This provides a benchmark to better understand Lynn County-wide our emissions. Lynn County has a history of committing to climate action, in part demonstrated by our ambitious emissions reduction goals as outlined in the Climate Resolution of 2019. Future reports will be completed by the newly created Sustainability and Resiliency Committee with support from the Office of Sustainability and International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. Lynn County is not only collecting data and tracking progress, we are taking action. A focus on resiliency and addressing issues of equity while taking action. TAM is working on creating a resiliency hub, which will focus on providing access to 3 initial critical resources: electricity, food, and actionable information. And as well as creating a tree equity program and creating opportunities for the next generation of environmental leaders. As many of you might be aware, Lynn County will be receiving a total of $44 million from the American Rescue Plan Act, better known as ARPA, in 2 different tranches. We received our first tranche of $22 million in June of last year, and we'll receive our final in June of this year. Recently, we approved $11 million in awards to organizations in categories in public health, capital investment, social services, affordable housing, and water and sewer infrastructure. Lynn County and the City of Cedar Rapids partnered to create a unified portal for applications to be submitted, reviewed, and vetted for eligibility and sent on to the appropriate municipality for their consideration. Lynn County did slow down our process when we were informed that we would be receiving approximately $53 million from the state of Iowa in community development block grants for disaster recovery and COVID relief. Once we learned that the state was not ready to write the rules and they weren't going to be final for many months, we decided to proceed forward with our funding awards. This is an incredible opportunity with one-time dollars to make significant investments in the community. Round 2 applications will be available in the near future, and our commitment is to invest in programs and services that are impactful and meaningful. As you can see, the velocity, complexity, and the number of issues that we face is vast. In addition to an electorate that is more divisive and divided than ever, armed with misinformation, along with escalating and dangerous rhetoric to match. Throughout this pandemic, the board has received hundreds of emails comparing our mask mandate for our buildings or the promotion of getting vaccines to be the immoral equivalent to slavery and 1930s Nazi Germany. There are policymakers and leaders in this room whose family members, relatives, and ancestors were impacted by slavery and the Holocaust. Words matter, information matters, and the truth matters. I am confident that Stacy's ancestors would gladly trade the cotton fields for a cotton mask. My Jewish great-grandparents were executed in a mass grave outside of a concentration camp in Riga, Latvia. They would have gladly traded the tattoo numbers on their forearm for a vaccine in their shoulder. This is real to me and changed the lives of my family and is not something that you can just throw around for political fodder. Speaking of World War II, in a recent conversation I had with Councilmember Ashley Van Orny, I learned that one of her relatives was a German minister who sympathized with the Jews during the 1940s. Because of this, he was evacuated to London, where he and other military-aged German males were deported to Australia, packed onto a ship called the HMT Danera. My great-uncle, Ernest Lyon, was smuggled out of Germany with my grandmother through the Kindertransport, never to see their parents again. He was deported from London en route to Australia with other military-aged German males, but that ship was torpedoed near Nova Scotia. After his rescue, he was then boarded onto a different ship to Australia called the HMT Danera. Our two relatives were on the same ship, headed to the same place, and now 70 years later, their descendants would be in position to decide how best to keep the community safe. Stories like Stacy's, Ashley's, and my own are personal and real. As policymakers, we do not take lightly the responsibilities confronting us during this pandemic. We reflect on what others before us have had to endure just to survive systemic oppression. This pandemic is not the same as what they went through. Words matter, information matter, and truth matters. And here's an interesting side note. One of Ashley's relative, Ashley Van Orny's relatives, would later become an Australian cosmic ray physicist who has a mountain named after him in Antarctica. And I don't know if you were able to climb it, Stacy, but we have now come full circle. You know, there's been a lot of interest in the impact of the reduction of the Board of Supervisors from 5 to 3 members. And I just want to highlight the past 2 years, what we've been faced with. The effects of an ongoing global pandemic and radically changing our operations to keep employees and the public safe, the aftermath of the derecho, including a rise in homelessness, a lack of affordable housing, and workforce pressures and shortages, loss of local control by the state legislature and governor denying local elected officials the ability to keep their citizens safe, the opening of the Mental Health Access Center, buying a new permanent cold weather overflow shelter, creating an agri-community at Dow's Farm, reviewing and voting on contentious and complicated utility-scale solar applications, all while keeping our eyes to the horizon and not being able to legally talk about any of these outside of a meeting. And I would also state that for the other elected officials here, they have faced almost the exact same hurdles and obstacles. Yes, the workload has increased, and yes, the ability to speak with your colleague on crafting better policy and achieving greater collaboration is why most counties in Iowa have a 5-member Board of Supervisors. Lynn County, with a population of just over 230,000, joins counties with 3-member boards like Sac County, population 9,814. Mills County, population 14,484. Hamilton County, population 15,039. And Jefferson County, population 15,663. I think you get the point I'm trying to make. In 2016, voters approved a ballot measure reducing the board to its current size. We were intentional with the ballot language. Shall the community's representation on the Board of Supervisors be reduced from 5 to 3? And I understand when people are faced with either having the same level of government or less, many people will be inclined to vote for less, but maybe not understanding its impact. We heard all throughout the solar debate that it is unfair that only 2 supervisors, let alone 2 from Cedar Rapids, get to make decisions that impact rural voters. The irony is not lost on me that the leader of the petition drive to reduce the board was from Coggan, Iowa, and 6 years after that successful petition drive, a 750-acre utility-scale solar array is scheduled to be constructed in Coggan, Iowa. Nor the fact that one of the former supervisors who did not win re-election when he was placed in the same district as his colleague in 2016 lived in and was the former mayor of Palo. Fewer supervisors means less representation, especially to rural Linn County voters and residents. Since citizens voted to reduce the board, it should be up to the voters of Linn County if they want to increase it back to 5, not by state legislative decree or by the Board of Supervisors arbitrarily placing it on a ballot for another vote. This decision should be up to the voters of Linn County. And so I'm going to start concluding my remarks here, and I want to thank several elected officials who have either recently retired or announced they are no longer going to serve in public office. Linn County Attorney Jerry Vandersanden retired late last year after a 39-year career with the County Attorney's Office. He started in the County Attorney's Office fresh out of law school in 1983. He hadn't even taken the bar exam yet. Later, he went on a blind date with another county employee, Denise, who became the love of his life. Treasurer Sharon Gonzalez is not seeking re-election and will be retiring at the end of this year. She started with Linn County on September 10, 1979. In her 43 years of service, Sharon has seen many changes to the Treasurer's Office and Linn County. All the titles and registration documents that used to be issued back then were on typewriter. If you screwed up, you had to start all over again. And you could smoke at your desk. The good old days. Sharon is proud of the high-quality customer satisfaction she and her staff provide to Linn County coming into her office, and we thank her for her 43 years of service. Recorder Joan McCalman is also not seeking re-election and is retiring after 36 years of service. She began her career with Linn County on November 3rd, 1986, as Chief Deputy Recorder. She replaced her sister, who had been the Chief Deputy for 8 years. Political appointments were very different back then. Joan has helped to modernize the scanning, storage, distribution of deeds, passport information, and marriage, birth, and death certificates, and we thank her for her 36 years of service. And so with the time that I have remaining, I want to say a few words about my friend, colleague, and brother, Stacy Walker. I first heard about Stacy Walker in 2013. Everyone was talking about how dynamic and game-changing Stacy was. Stacy, 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 Stacy. I was really looking forward to meeting her. Stacy is a trailblazer, a dear friend, and I would argue one of the most consequential and important elected officials to have ever held local office. He is a man fiercely devoted to elevating people of color, being a voice to those who struggle to find their own voice, and he dares to do what the great philosopher Aeschylus once said, to make gentle the life of this world. When you surround yourself with someone whose spirit of intellect, curiosity, passion to help others, and to stand firm in the face of systems designed to push you down, you cannot help but be transformed. I have watched Stacy run headfirst into issues which push back with the strongest headwinds and the steepest of terrain. He took leadership of the Safe, Equitable, and Thriving Task Force before he was elected because a 14-year-old African-American child shot a 15-year-old African-American child, and someone needed to lead on addressing youth gun violence in our community. As one of the few African-American elected officials in the state of Iowa, the burden of being a voice, a symbol, a representative of people of color has both fueled him and inspired him into action. I saw up close and personal the toll each time someone who looked like him was killed by police. He has opened my eyes to many of the injustices that sadly occur in our communities, but he seeks to right the wrong. I could speak ad nauseum about how much Stacy means to me, but I will leave it with how much my daughter, Penelope, loves Stacy Lynn Walker. When your children love your best friend for who they are, you know that person is special. My daughter, Penelope, loves Stacy like family. Their bond is unbreakable, and neither time nor distance with his future endeavors will diminish that. My brother, Stacy, is leaving a legacy of transformation, Black liberation, accomplishments that have changed the lives for the better, hope to those who search for the light in the darkness of their days, and I am left inspired, humbled, and lucky to not only serve with my best friend, but become a better person because of him. I will leave you with a quote that Stacy uses that has become personal to me and I wish to share. We work in the dark, we do what we can, we give what we have. Our doubt is our passion, and our passion is our task. The rest is all the madness of art. Thank you. Thank you all. All right, ready for these softballs?
Okay, well, first of all, let's get the softballs from the audience. Anyone with a question, please raise your hand, and we'll have volunteers pick up those questions and bring them forward. Looks like we're stuck with.
Or we can
my-
just give people the
my
gift of
question.
time if they wish. But I think, Libby, do you have some, or?
We
Okay.
could. Oh, we have some coming. Well, one thing I would like to ask of you is about the mental health issue. I serve on the Willis-Dady Homeless Services Board, and would like to thank you personally for the work that the county has done towards Willis-Dady and their homeless services, which includes the mental health aspect. But tell me a little bit about how you think we're going to be able to fund some of this going forward. I know we have a lot of federal funds coming in, but are we going to be able to support some of these services, including the Access Center, which is an incredible tool, going forward with mental health dollars from the state?
Great question, and that's really the challenge and opportunity of our time in this arena of either mental health or substance use. County government is funded entirely from property tax dollars. So the services that we provide not only impact our residents here, but people come from elsewhere to utilize these very necessary services. We're lucky in this region to have Johnson County's Access Center called GuideLink, and they have almost the same model that we do. And so we are part of a 9-member region of mental health and disability services. And so up until the change of the fiscal year going forward, these were all locally levied property tax dollars, but the state has taken over the mental health funding. And so we are working with the Department of Human Services and whatever that hybrid of DHS and public health is on ensuring that we have stable and predictable funding. And any provider that's in the room here knows the importance of being able to build a budget on something that is stable and predictable. And in Iowa, we have some of the nation's lowest Medicaid rates, meaning that when someone who comes in with Medicaid, oftentimes those providers have to do, whenever they accept $1 of Medicaid, they also have to find a corresponding private dollar through grants, fundraising, and other means. So hopefully we'll be working with the state on trying to either increase Medicaid rates or ensuring that these services, which are evidence-based and are high impact, continue to be funded at the level that allow our citizens and people from the other areas come in whenever they need it, that it's there for them, because it has already shown great success in diverting people away from hospitals and emergency rooms and the jail. So I know our area legislators, both Republican and Democrat, both really understand the importance of funding these and funding them at levels that allow growing communities like our own to continue to provide these services.
We do have a question from the audience, and actually dovetails neatly into this topic. Research suggests rapid rehousing is very effective at ending repeat houselessness or homelessness. Are we doing in Lynn County anything to, get on that trend?
Absolutely. I highlighted the overflow shelter because this is an arena that we play in, because every year providers would have to find a location downtown that, and many times, was not suitable for human habitation because they were a business at one point and not to house 100 people a night. So sheltering has its place, but sheltering does not end the cycle of homelessness. Rapid rehousing does. So we are working with local providers. Many of the ARPA applications, the American Rescue Plan Act, have affordable housing as part of the applications that we've considered. So I know we're partnering with the city on several of those to try and address not only the shortage of affordable housing, but derecho took out many of the lower income units that we use for rapid rehousing. There is no silver bullet for homelessness, but certainly if you can get someone in a home or an apartment and you can get them stabilized and they want to take other services, their chances of success are far greater. So sheltering does have its place. I'm proud of it. It has a need, but rapid rehousing and other housing programs are really the way that providers like Willis Dady and Waypoint and other services really help people break these very difficult systems of poverty.
Iowa Finance Authority, Governor Reynolds, they've also worked towards the concept of just simply affordable housing on the same topic. And there are significant funds available now through the state. Is the county working with Iowa Finance Authority and the state to grab some of that money as well?
If we're not, we will be.
Okay.
So
Have at it.
We work very closely with the professionals who do this. We have professionals on our staff. We're in constant communication with all the providers that assist people who find themselves either at risk or chronically homeless. So it's an issue that, I grew up here. I'm not pinpointing it on anything or anybody, but if you grew up here, you never saw the level of homelessness that we're seeing today. And that 40% is not a national statistic. That is from the point in time count that's done twice a year in January and in July. And it's routinely noted by, again, these providers who see that most people who are at risk of being homeless, oftentimes it is because of domestic violence. And when that statistic of 40% being children, there's ways we can do much, much better for children and families in our community.
Let's switch gears to the solar project, because you telegraphed that you really would like to keep talking about that earlier. But it might be helpful for all of us to know, what are the top 1 to 2 bits of misinformation that you think have been repeated over and over again that you would like to disabuse us of that disinformation?
Well, this is a very interesting topic, because at the heart of it, while we're talking about investing in renewable and sustainable forms of energy, this is also a property rights issue. These are farmers who want to lease the land that they own to farm differently in the 21st century. And that brings with it a lot, there's a lot of, Louis is a row crop farmer, right? He grows his crops and sells them at market. There are farmers who are incredible stewards of their land. There are also farmers for which, if a private entity comes and says, I want to utilize your land at this amount for these many years, and it means you don't have to purchase any new equipment, you don't have to tend to the land, and if we do this right, the soil health will be much better, because the contract states that the land has to be returned to its natural state and usable state. That really gets neighbors thinking about what is farming in the 21st century. It's not an easy issue. This isn't a slam dunk. It changes the landscape. It changes the way people look out into their community. And so some of the misinformation has been, do solar panels really produce the mega wattage that it's being stated for? Does it really help reduce the effects of climate change? Is it sustainable? If you just look at what has happened recently with disruptions in oil and natural gas, we really do have to look at other forms of our energy security. So During those meetings, it was people taking it upon themselves to do their research, to understand how this has impacted other communities. And we also had to do our research to say that we think that this is a noble and worthy investment, and our role is to approve basically the zoning to allow it. But there were people who were very passionate. Of course, there's information that I didn't agree with, but these are people who are fighting for their community, and we appreciated having these long meetings, because if you're going to change something for 40 years, you really should put the time in. So I'm very excited for these other projects. I did highlight, though, that, and they're not connected, that the two places where these utility scale solar arrays are going were places where these residents used to have more county supervisors to represent their interests. Utility scale solar was not on my radar in 2016, but its impact is certainly being felt, and over again, it was residents saying, why is it that Stacy and I get to make these decisions if we vote in favor of it? And that's the challenge and opportunity with the 3-member board. And so we're gonna have a series of pretty contentious meetings probably coming up in the summer and fall for the next era. It'll get a lot of attention, and it deserves it. And it hopefully will go smoothly. And with the closure of Duane Arnold, we have to rethink how we generate and utilize energy right now. So I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you very much. Someone graciously wrote, "Here's a softball for you."
So it's not going to be one.
No, I think it really is.
Okay.
We'll use this as our wrap-up
All right.
question, and then we will give you the gift of time, so pressure's on. Given unlimited time and resources, what would you love to accomplish? Let's say the top 1 to 2 things you would love to accomplish within Lynn County in the next 5 years.
Oh, wow, 1 to 2 things. I think it's first of all, great question. To keep our eyes out onto the horizon is something that previous supervisors and current elected officials who are here have helped us to do. This will be sort of the challenge going forward, and I don't know how you quantify it, but I think everyone in here knows that we are a more divided community through national politics, through the pandemic. It's changed how we, I think the lens through which we look at issues. I don't know how we get back to a state of normalcy or a pre-pandemic mindset, but I think the challenge going forward is, as we deal in political circles and arenas, is remembering sort of what I went back to with this roundtable that we had at Louis Farm. People from very different walks of life who experience life differently and look through life differently, laughing together, finding common bond, enjoying each other's company, diving deeper into understanding what makes them tick. I think that that's a critically important part to the growth and vitality of our community. We are a growing community, so certainly that is something that will be the challenge of every person in this room and citizens, to really find a way to better communicate and understand those for whom you disagree. I think we're also, with changing economic conditions, we're going to see more pressure placed on nonprofit providers and the county to provide these critical services. So in the next 5 years, I really hope that we have created sustainable, predictable systems and funding mechanisms that allow us to address some of the most pressing, urgent needs that we're facing. That will be the challenge of our time.
Well, no offense, but your daughter was far more interested in what Stacy had to say.
Clearly.
Than you.
She
And
always is.
I think your son fell asleep.
Yep, that's typical.
Thank you very much. I think that was a great answer to the question, and we all appreciate your time today. A round of applause for
Thank you, everyone.
Supervisor Rogers.
Appreciate you. And I would like to give a personal thanks to our American Sign Language interpreters for being here. We wanted to make this as inclusive as possible, so I hope my cadence and speed was okay. I appreciate you and for making this a more accessible state of the county / bar mitzvah wedding venue. So thank you all. Have a great day.
And thank you again to our sponsors and the League of Women Voters. Why don't we give one final round of applause to those public workers who are here, not only those who are retiring, but those who do our business every day. All right, go out and enjoy your extra 7 minutes.